Rishi Sunak is said to be preparing to limit the powers of local councils to impose those blanket 20-mile-per-hour speed zones that have popped up everywhere. The Prime Minister is also hoping to gain support from drivers by announcing a plan for motorists at the Tory conference this week in Manchester. These plans include a restriction on the number of hours a day that cars are banned from bus lanes and curbing the use of number plate recognition cameras. Well, joining me right now is Extinction Rebellion's John Fuller. Good morning to you, John. Afternoon. That's another tenner in the charity box for saying morning. Right, that's 20 quid now. Good afternoon to you, John.
Thank you very much for having me on.
Thank you very much. Although, as Extinction Rebellion want to turn back time, that probably is the morning for them. I don't know. Right, John, let me ask you, I want to ask you about HS2, the breaking news in the last hour or so, that the Prime Minister is going to basically get rid of the Manchester leg of HS2. But let's stick with some of these motoring measures first. A lot of motorists rely on their cars to get to and from work, to get kids to school, to go about their business if they're self-employed or you know, salesperson. They need their cars, and a lot of people have got, frankly, quite peeved with low traffic neighbourhoods, the fact they can't use a completely empty bus lane, that no bus is anywhere near and hasn't been near for an hour, and that they're facing a 20-mile-per-hour zone on often major carriageways, which should easily be a 30-mile-per-hour zone. Do you think the Prime Minister has got it right or wrong?
No, he's definitely got it wrong, and the rhetoric is all wrong as well. He says there's a war on the motorists, but the government's been in office now for 13 years. If there's a war on the motorists, it's the Conservative Party that's been waging that war. But I don't actually think there is a war on the motorists when fuel duty has been frozen for 13 years, which has cost the Exchequer £80 billion. So there's no wonder there's no money to fix potholes if we're not paying what we should be paying in to fix things like potholes. I think when it comes to the whole idea, though, of reducing traffic, making our residential streets a lot safer, I firmly believe that most people do want that to happen. There are always going to be controversies around a particular scheme. There are always going to be winners and losers. But overall, the vast majority of people recognise that if we want to reduce traffic and we want to reduce pollution, we want to tackle climate change, then we have to reduce our car use. That's part of it. And I've been looking at opinion polls this afternoon. 71% of people support measures to encourage cycling. The vast majority of people.
Why not? Yeah. Why wouldn't you support measures to encourage cycling? But that's not the same as saying I'd like to be taxed out of using my car and make it impossible for me to actually travel around my city. Now, this is the key thing. I'm perfectly happy for there to be 20-mile-per-hour zones, around, my street is a residential street, around schools. Of course, that makes sense. But we're talking about 20-mile-per-hour zones across, around high streets, at 3 in the morning. There are no children crossing the road at this point. What purpose does that serve other than to slow down people's journeys? We've seen it in Wales. Pretty much every single city in town, every built-up area is now a 20-mile-per-hour zone. Why is that necessary? And what does it achieve other than bringing pretty much our country to a halt?
Well, we do face a crisis. It really is an unprecedented crisis that we face, and we have to.
Well, no, what's the crisis that we face, John?
Well, let's have a look at what Jeremy Clarkson said in his column in The Sun a few days ago. He said he got everything wrong on climate change. And he was referring to the absolute flood of people who have been forced from their homes around the world and refugees heading to the UK and Europe.
By climate change, right? You're saying we need to have a 20-mile-per-hour zone because of climate change.
We need to make radical changes.
No, answer that question. How does a 20-mile-per-hour zone, basically making all of our towns and cities 20-mile-per-hour speed limit? I could understand if that would save some children's lives. I personally would suggest that people teach their children how to cross roads properly and put their phones down, going back to our previous story. But what's that got to do with climate change?
Thankfully, we've got the example of Netherlands, Denmark, and some towns and cities in Germany. Yep. So we can see what actually happens when you greatly reduce speed limits and you get far more people out walking and cycling. And, I go to the Netherlands from time to time, and people are cycling at all times.
Do you know what? I'm so fed up of people talking about this. We talk about Amsterdam. It's a city, it's a fraction of the size of most of our big cities. They've got loads of space for people to cycle. How lovely. It's nice and flat. Most most people cannot get to their work, their place of work, and often to their children's school, A, the time, B, the distance, unless they've got a car. People have cars because they're a necessity for most people in this country. The idea all these people are going to walk, 10 miles to work in the morning after walking 5 miles in the opposite direction to take their kids to school is an absolute nonsense.
Well, if you look at the average length of journeys here in the UK, the vast majority of journeys can be made by walking and cycling. So I don't completely agree with you. In fact, I don't agree with you at all if you were to say that everybody needs to have their cars.
I didn't say everybody. The vast majority, 80% of people in this country travel to and from work or take their kids to school by motor vehicle. That's their main mode of transport.
Yeah, and probably 40 to 50% of those people would love the roads to be safe enough for them to be able to cycle.
Well, and it would be lovely if they were safe enough to cycle, if we did have space if we were starting from scratch and building a brand new city, I'd put cycle paths in or wider pavements and it'd all be lovely. But we're not going to knock down Manchester and Liverpool and Birmingham and Newcastle and London. And Bristol. We're not going to knock the cities down and start again, are we? And that's where this becomes ridiculous. Motorists are, most people in this country. They are, in fact, most cyclists actually own a car as well. They just want to be able to get around and do their business. I don't understand why climate change has got anything to do with 20 miles per hour zones, other than the fact you're admitting that a main point of this is to make people's lives a bit more difficult and force them out of their cars.
Well, we need to make the change and we need to use our cars a lot less. I'm afraid it is linked to climate change.
How?
It's linked to toxic air.
How? Toxic air? Yeah, it's not toxic. We've never had cleaner air in our cities than we have now.
It's still killing a lot of people.
How many people is it killing?
In London, it's 4,000 people.
It's not. That's an extrapolation. Yeah. It's the average person in London lives, about 30 minutes less than they would otherwise at the end of their life because they've had all the benefits of cars and fridges and electricity and heating and all of the trains and all of those other things. It's a nonsense. It's an absolute nonsense made up stat.
Let's look at Ella Kissi-Debrah. She's quite famous. She died very young. So we are talking about some children.
There's one girl. It's a terrible, tragic death. One death. One death has been attributed to pollution from cars. One death.
According to her mother, Rosamund Kissi-Debrah, it's 50 children a year.
Her mother. Oh, sorry. The mother of a tragically dead child is now the expert on this.
Well, I think she is. We really should pay attention to her because she's been campaigning on this.
She has been campaigning. My heart goes out to her as a mother to another mother, but that's irrelevant to the actual issue in hand. Let me ask you, John, about HS2. I'm always a bit confused about people who are avid climate change, with all due respect, hysterics, in my view, whether or not you support more railway projects or not, because HS2 obviously is a massively energy-intensive project. But we've been looking at rumours going on for quite a long time that the government, after a couple of years ago, abandoning the Birmingham to Leeds segment of the HS2, it's just going to be London to Birmingham. Then now, it does appear, Treasury sources have confirmed, they're going to abandon the leg to Manchester as well. So basically, we're going to look at a Birmingham to London high-speed rail that's not going to be high-speed and doesn't even go all the way to central London. Do you support or do you not support the cancelling of the Manchester leg?
Yes, we can make far better use with that money by improving transport infrastructure much closer to Manchester, Leeds, Sheffield. We don't need high-speed rail that's only going to benefit a small number of people for an absolutely incredible amount of money. Some of the figures being bandied around in the press over the last few days have just been incredible. How can something cost between 100 billion and 180 billion pounds? We could give people free rail and bus transport forever for that kind of money. People would never need to pay again. I just find it incredible. No, this is terrible value for money. And we need to scrap high speed too.
I'm amazed I'm finding myself in agreement with someone from Extinction Rebellion on this issue. I think it is a terrible waste of money, but I thought the whole thing was a waste of money. And certainly I'd rather spend money on those transport links east and west. But I have a funny feeling a lot of those would involve, more buses, more train lines. I don't know whether you'd support that. When you say extra transport links, do you just mean we build 4,000 new cycle paths?
I'm all in favour of seeing more efforts to get people onto public transport. So local rail networks, tram networks, definitely the buses. The buses can do a lot of the heavy lifting. And yeah, we do need more cycle lanes. Make it safer for people and they will come.
All right, really good to talk to you. Fantastic to have you on the show. John Fuller,